What is up, everyone? JD here. I hope you're all doing well today. I have a blade battle for you. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Spyderco Manix 2 Lightweight, and we're going to be comparing it against the SIG K320 made by Hogue. Now, I do own the aluminum variant of this one, but for this particular blade battle, I'm going to be referencing the polymer handle versus the FRN handle. What we're going to do is we're going to run through the specs, and then we're going to weigh in on categories. What we're going to be doing today is we're actually going to be going part by part, bit by bit through the knife and ranking each category, and I will give you my winner at the end based on the results. All right, so let's go ahead and go through handle first. The SIG K320 has a 4.75 inch polymer handle. The Manix 2 has a 4.66 inch FRN handle. So out the gate, you might hear that and think that the advantage for the handle space is going to go to the SIG because you have that forward finger choil, which is shared by the knife steel, giving you more handle length. But when you actually come back on the actual handle length and you look at where these two knives are when you're actually holding them by the handle, you actually just barely slightly get a tiny bit of edge on that Manix 2. And then when you choke up, you actually have just a little bit more on the Manix 2 for the handle length. So I actually am going to give that to the Manix 2. Next, we're going to talk about the ergos. These both have extremely good ergonomics. They feel very good in hand, choked back. They feel amazing in hand, choked up. The FRN on the SIG, though, is rounded and chamfered, and it has the stimpling that you have on here, or I was corrected the other day. I believe it's just stimping on it. I'm not quite sure which way you say it, but I know that it has it on it. And that actually gives you good grip while feeling more comfortable around the edges. So I'm giving this to the SIG, but slightly. The ergos on the Manix 2 are fantastic, but it has a little bit more hardness on the actual corners than it does on the SIG. That's what's giving the advantage to the K320. Just fantastic edges. Now let's talk about the blades. So on my particular variant, I have the 3.37 inch S110V steel on it, but the standard model comes with S30V, and I thought it'd be a little bit more fair to talk about their standard versions. So you have a 3.5 inch S30V on the SIG K320. Both manufacturers in this instance do a phenomenal job with their edges. They lay it back. You get fantastic edges on both knives. You get really good heat treat from both of these knives. I'm going to give that a tie on the steel and the edge because same steels, very slicey, thin edges from the factory, and both of them lay their edges back really, really well. You could give a slight advantage possibly to the Manix, but I mean, their edges are really close on how they lay them back. So I really just couldn't give it to one or the other in that instance. So I would say the SIG in its standard form and the Manix 2 in its standard form are definitely a tie for the steel and their edges. Now, when it comes to geometry, 100% got to give that to the Manix 2. The Manix 2 coming in really, really thin with a tall flat grind. So even though it looks like here, maybe I'll do it this way. Here, and maybe it looks like they're very close to the same geometry, even though that swedge makes it look like it's thinner, because you get so much more height out of the grind. It goes all the way to the top. This ends up making the Manix 2 slightly more slicey, going through the materials a little bit easier, but in all honesty, they do a phenomenal job. But a slight advantage to the geometry is going to go to the Manix 2 because that tall flat grind really comes into play. Next, let's talk about deployment methods. I'm going to start with the thumb holes. This is a very easy win for the Mannix 2. It definitely has the edge when it comes to the thumb hole deployment. It has a nice large thumb hole, very easy for anyone to deploy the knife, and I really appreciate that. The SIG K320 takes a little bit more effort. You got to make sure that you're putting the meat in there and that you're hitting it just right to deploy it. And you can even see that was a softer deployment because you can't really get your finger or your meat in there. They need to make it a little bit bigger and just give it a little bit more sharpness around the edges. But honestly, just making it a touch bigger would actually really go a long ways for the deployment of the knife. The other way that you can deploy these, they both have the crossbar locks in there. They're built a little bit differently, but you can deploy both of them that way. So that is a tie for the crossbar lock, for lack of a better way to describe them. And then the Mannix 2, 100%, in my opinion, getting the edge on the deployment, because that thumb hole is really, really quite easy to use. As far as length, it's too close to call. 8 inches on the SIG K320, you get 8.03 on the Mannix 2. So that really, from a carry profile perspective, it's going to be too close to call. Let's talk about weight. And again, keep in mind, both of them, I'm talking about the lightweight variant, I'm talking about the polymer variant, because that's the lightest variant of the SIG K320. The Mannix 2 comes in at 2.9 ounces, coming in under 3 ounces. If you're looking for the light carry or the lightest weight carry of this, if you want something that you can throw in your shorts in the summertime and not know that it's there and it's not going to bug you and bother you as you're walking around, the Mannix 2 has got you covered, because the K320 and the polymer variant comes in at 4.2 ounces. So it is definitely under 5 ounces, which is great, but it's going to be a little bit heavier. Now, if you don't like the lighter knife, then your winner is going to be the K320, because it's going to feel a little bit more heavy, going to feel a little bit more substantial in hand. You know, I will say, when I go from one to the other, like, I appreciate that this is super lightweight, like it's almost not there. But then, and again, this is the aluminum, but even with the polymer, just that weight difference makes this feel a little bit more solid, a little bit more serious, whereas the Mannix 2 can kind of feel like a toy. It's almost a lightweight. Not calling it a toy, I'm just saying that's how it kind of feels going between the two. It's the best way that I can think of to describe this. Now, the lock systems on these, you have the 100% locked up crossbar lock. They call theirs the Able Lock, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure it's the Able Lock. Works really well, feels really nice, has awesome studs on it so that you can actuate it really confidently, get good grip, and it's super, super smooth to deploy and operate. Now, it is easily able to be kicked out when you flick it or flip it. But that's how they're able to get it to be so buttery smooth when it operates. I have not had the K320 Omega Springs break on me, so that is an asterisk there to keep that in mind. Now, you have a ball cage ceramic, well, actually it comes with a steel ball, sorry. They have aftermarket ceramic balls, but you can't take this one apart. There is a rumor that a revised version of this knife from Spyderco that is able to be disassembled, like the Sage 5, like the Para 3 lightweight, is coming, but this is not one of those variants. Having said that, even though it is plastic, very proud, and they're ramped. You see how they're ramped up? Really good to operate to close this, and it is very, very smooth. I will say the SIG K320 operates a little bit more smoothly, but I think that's because you get more strength with this one. You see, it doesn't want to just flip out or flop out or whatever you want to call it with that kick. And I can't, dang it. I know I just did it, but I can't quite get it to do it again. What it's doing now, it's just kind of doing that. So heavier detent, stronger spring here. Could be you think that it's nice to have that, like if you don't want to flip it or flick it, you can just pop it, just like it's super easy, just like a flick of the wrist, and it's coming out to deploy it. You might like that. If you don't, then the Mannix 2 is going to be a little bit better. I will say, because I have had you know, it's 50-50. I've had Omega Springs break on these knives, and I have aftermarket ones on my bug out which have not broken, which is why I keep the spares. But I will say that I feel like a spring pushing into the lock on a ceramic ball, to me, I've not had the original Manix 2 that I had break, and so far the lightweight, you know, I haven't had it super long, but combined the two of them, you're talking about over a year's worth of time together with no issues. So I will give a slight advantage to the lock on the Manix 2, but both are really good and each have their advantage. This one's a little bit more stiff, so if you don't have really good hand strength, you probably will appreciate the Able Lock a little bit more. That's everything on the knives, right? Everything that we've talked about. Ergos, you do get a little bit more jimping going on here around the edges, but again, it's a little bit sharper, but it's going to feel a little bit more secure in hand. You do have nice carve outs and cutouts, but you don't have anything to help you secure your hand until you get up here. And again, I feel like that's more for the thumb. You do get a little bit there in the webbing when you grab it, and it feels a little bit more comfortable in hand because it's a little bit more rounded, where the Manix 2 feels a little bit more hard in hand. In the end, who would I pick as my winner? This is really tough because I actually love both these knives a lot, a whole lot. It's why I came back to the Manix 2 lightweight, because I wanted something that was summer carry, and I actually truly do like the lightweight more than I like the Manix 2 because of its lightweight feature and the ability to carry it, but it just feels really good in hand. And I'm excited about the fact that they're coming out with the ability to disassemble and maintenance that knife. The SIG K320, I love it so much that I upgraded from the polymer to the aluminum, which I love even more. It's a great knife. If I had to choose one though, I'm actually going to go with the Manix 2 lightweight. A couple of reasons why. The geometry on the knife. I really like that tall flat grind. I prefer this ball cage lock a little bit better. I like the strength on it, and I love the fact that it's probably less prone to failure than an Omega Spring over the life of the knife, and it just slightly feel a little bit better in the larger hands, and it feels like it has just a little bit more maneuverability to move around. And yes, I do like the bi-directional pattern of the FRN, because when that's in hand, because this is plastic, it normally would feel like as your hand got sweaty it was going to slide around, but I just feel all of that bi-directional pattern in the hand. And then I have this extra jimping on the back. I have it on the back down here as well. So just so much more for my hand to grip onto. And it really does feel like it's not going anywhere. But as far as the comfort, I mean, again, that goes back to the SIG feeling. It is secure in hand, but it's more comfortable for longer periods of time. It's not as aggressive. So it is a tough, tight call here. Both have the ability to have the pocket clips reversed. The SIG actually gives you the ability to carry it tip up or tip down. So a little bit of an advantage there, and I forgot to go over that. And I forgot to go over the fact the pocket clips. I actually prefer the SIG. I do not like the wire pocket clip, and I know that Lynch Northwest does one, but I don't like it because it feels cheap and it moves around too much for me. So I probably would go with the Lynch, because then it would give me the deep carry and it would move all this back out of the way, because then it would have the ramp. So I would say with the Lynch, I would give that advantage to the Manix 2, because it's going to improve the ergos. The ergos here are fine, but you do feel a little bit of this material here when you have it in hand. It's not super sharp, but it is a little bit pokey, so you do feel it there. Just a couple of other little points, but in the end, by barely I give it to the Manix 2, and those reasons that I mentioned are why. And if you make this to where it can be disassembled in maintenance, I think it grows its lead a little bit more. I think the SIG K320, because it can be taken apart and maintenance pretty easily, keeps it close in that race. Like, it would be really tough to call it be a toss-up. You honestly could not go wrong with these knives. If you actually like the look of one better than the other, you cannot go wrong. And I'm telling you, that polymer does feel more premium because of how it's finished, but the FRN feels more secure in hand. So if you're actually using the knife a lot, the Spyderco Manix 2 is going to have the advantage. If you're just using it on occasion and breaking it out to use it, you know, for some quick task and putting it back away, I would say you still get the advantage with the SIG because it does feel good and it is going to be secure enough for that. Who would you pick? Let me know down in the comments. I'd be very curious who you would pick. And again, I am using the lighter weight versions of these two variants, but if you wanted to say the G10 versus the aluminum, you could tell me in the comments how that would turn out for you and what you would pick. I think you're probably going to have people on either side that are going to say one way or the other. I think it'd be very interesting to see how people pan out on the decision between these two. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, leave a like. Consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed. Make sure that notification bell is turned on. You don't want to miss future alerts for videos that are coming. I hope all of you have a fantastic week. Thank you for the continued support, and until next time, peace.